This week on the show, we're revisiting a topic that is very important to me. I am continuing to finalize the editing for my memoir that will be published in the next couple of months. And as many of you know, a central theme of my life story is that of allowing your thoughts and feelings, wants and needs to flow onto the written pages of a journal so that you can make sense of it, as I have done over the years. So today I have decided to replay a previous episode about journaling. And whether you consider yourself someone that loves journaling or you're more in the or I'm not sure about that category, would you just give this a listen today and see what you think?
Welcome to the Starting Over Stronger show, where you'll find health and hope for your divorce survival and recovery. Divorce well, live well.
Hello, it's Annie with the Starting Over Stronger show, and I wanted to spend some time with you today talking about a topic that is very important to my recovery journey, and I believe can be crucial to yours as well. In fact, I'm so sure of it that I'm writing a book about it. My memoir of my experience growing up in marrying and finally awakening to a lifetime of dysfunction. I want you to experience what I did as well. And that's why I feel called to write this book. And so today, what I want to do is talk just a little bit about the theme of this book, not so much the memoir part of it, because I think that much is probably pretty clear. I want to tell my story like so many people do here on the show. I want to talk about how I got where I am. But a big part of that for me centers around journaling. And I know that not everyone loves journaling. And I think to some degree there's a benefit for it in anyone who's willing to discipline themselves to do it. And in fact, I've known of people that have felt like they wouldn't enjoy it, who have absolutely fallen in love with the practice of journaling. And then I know that there are people who generally just don't enjoy it and don't get a great benefit from it because they are more verbal or auditory learners, and they really can get that same benefit from maybe having a conversation with themselves out loud or just really exploring in their own mind the same kinds of concepts that a person journaling might actually write down with pen and paper. But today, what I want to talk about is journaling. Because I truly do believe journaling dissolves the pain, confusion, and stress of allowing millions of racing thoughts to buzz around in our heads all day long and on any given day. Without some release, those thoughts remain trapped there in our brains, and journaling sets them free. The first time I put a pen to paper in the form of journaling, I was around 30 years old. I was in therapy for the first time in my life. I probably had diaries of some sort as a teenager, but they were likely more random and sporadic in nature, although honestly, quite likely they were born of the same emotional turmoil just 15 years or so previous to this. But at 30, I was married now with 2 children. I was at home full time raising them, active in our church and schools, volunteering and devoting my days entirely to the well-being of my kids and my family, and just enjoying spending my kids' growing up years with them. Sounds picturesque, doesn't it? Well, don't be jealous just yet. My life at 30 was far from the idyllic family story that our public lives would probably have been portraying for the world to see. Remember, I said I had just started journaling as a result of my first time experiencing the world of therapy.
Are you tired of feeling alone and stuck in your current situation?
Whether you're in an unfulfilling or toxic marriage, in the middle of a messy divorce, or maybe still seeking a better life after your divorce, Starting Over Stronger has a support group for you. You'll meet weekly online with a group of women experiencing all the same pain, fears, doubts, and confusion. And you'll leave there each week feeling heard, known, and cared for. You will come to understand why you are where you are and how to move toward happiness and fulfillment, feeling supported. Don't put it off another day. Go to startingoverstronger.com now and click groups in the menu bar. Get registered, and for just $88 a month, you'll start this week being a part of an amazing group of women whose presence and affirmation will help you feel less alone and stuck and more clear and confident come what may.
And why was I seeing a therapist? Because I was becoming increasingly more uncomfortable with the status quo of my life. I was spending a lot of time confused, avoiding my feelings. And then when I did run into my feelings head on and couldn't ignore them anymore, I didn't like what I was seeing. The emotional pain was on the rise. And at times, in fact, it felt more like torment. And I just was simply trying to make some kind of sense of my life and the things that I was feeling and experiencing. And I didn't even have words yet to explain what I was feeling and what I was experiencing and was about to come to realize over what would be the next 15 years. Flashback another decade or so to when I was just starting elementary school, and you'll find me feeling many of the same feelings: avoidance, fear, confusion, emotional pain. As a child growing up in what we called dysfunction back then, well, actually, we didn't call it anything, maybe normal, if anything. It was all I had ever known, so it was my normal. Nowadays, people are more likely to describe it as toxic, and it definitely was toxic. It poisoned my basic trust in the goodness of people. It poisoned my ability to believe that I was lovable just as I was. It poisoned my mind so much so that I didn't even know what was normal or healthy or good. You see, I grew up in what would by most standards be considered a lower middle class, suburban, Midwest, white existence. My parents both worked, though my dad was the breadwinner, and he only allowed my mom to work when he wanted her to, and only allowed her to have the jobs that he wanted her to have. She really had no autonomy, no voice. And my two older sisters and one younger brother and I had our basic needs met. We had clothes, we had food, we had toys, we got Christmas presents, we got new clothes every September for school, even if they were mostly hand-me-downs. And we had bruises underneath those clothes. We played with the neighborhood kids. We made snowmen in the winter. We celebrated birthdays with extended family every month, just like every other normal family I knew, except I don't know what went on behind their closed doors. Were other kids afraid of their dads? Did they get hit and yelled at too? Did anyone ever tell them they loved them? Were their moms also hit and yelled at by their dads, unable or unwilling to protect themselves or their children? Were their moms also seemingly dead inside emotionally, unable to bond with anyone? Did the other little boys and girls on our street and our family trees feel loved, safe, seen? I had no idea what normal was, if anyone did. I just knew what I knew, and I knew that what I knew was painful, and I wanted out of it as soon as possible. I lived the entire first 18 years of my life in some sort of survival mode, detached, self-protective, self-reliant, scared, alone, and unaware of much of the mechanisms I was developing to try to create safety and security, emotionally, psychologically, and even physically in my life, just putting one foot in front of the other, trying to figure out life on my own, because I certainly had no role models that I cared to emulate. Not my parents, not my siblings, not really even my grandparents. I come from a long line of people who did the best they could, I guess, with what they had and what they knew and with what they had experienced. And I chose to believe if they had known better, they would have done better. I accept that this philosophy may or may not hold true for all, but I just like the world better when I accept this as my basis for living and for loving the big wide world around me. So I left home the minute I could when I turned 18. I didn't care where I was going. I wasn't really moving toward anything. I was simply moving away from what I knew I never wanted again. Unfortunately, that knowing better and doing better philosophy holds true in the reverse as well. And I definitely did not yet know better. Except, I suppose, by rare miracles. Healthy partnering doesn't happen by accident. Broken people choose broken people for broken reasons. And in my case, I chose to leave my abusive father's home to pursue the only relationship I'd ever experienced with a then young man who I thought was my knight in shining armor, rescuing me from a lifetime of abuse. Never mind that our patterns of communication were just as dysfunctional as any I'd ever known. Friends and family alike were seeing the signs and warning me to be cautious, but they didn't get it, right? Or so I believed. We were going to overcome the odds and live happily ever after.
Your divorce is almost final. Now what? Do you want to make sense of the past so you don't repeat it? Maybe you're tired of feeling ashamed for what you've allowed in your life or the mistreatment you have tolerated in your marriage, or for the fact that divorce is a part of your journey at all. Have you ever thought about making yourself a priority in your new life, but immediately worried you were being selfish? Maybe you're ready to break free of all the emotional ties to your ex and the unfulfilling or toxic relationship patterns of the past. I invite you to experience all this and more at the November 6th to 11th Starting Over Stronger retreat in the perfectly peaceful Cedar Crest Retreat Center in Pleasanton, Kansas. On your Starting Over Stronger retreat, you'll receive the rest you so desperately need, the silence and solitude, along with the tools that allow you to reflect, reframe, and reset after your divorce so you can shift away from self-defeating and limiting beliefs and behaviors. You will gain authenticity, confidence, clarity, and grace, having learned my favorite proven techniques for a calmer, more centered head and heart space. And you'll be surprised how easy this transition can be and how amazing it feels. So don't miss out. Being an intimately sized venue, this event will sell out. Find out more now at www.sosretreat.com. I'm looking forward to meeting you there and transforming with you.
If only we could figure out how to not argue. Thinking back on it all now, 30 some years later, I couldn't even begin to tell you what we even argued about. I think there was just a lot of mirroring what we had seen in our parents' relationships. He standing poised to never let a woman mistreat him the way his mother mistreated his father. And me, you guessed it, standing steadfastly against the exact opposite. Combine that with a whole lot of immaturity, and honestly, we probably never stood a chance. And yet we somehow fumbled through 7 years of teenage dating and eventually married in our early 20s. 6 months into the marriage was the first time I considered divorce. But instead, I poured myself into my faith in a way I never had before. And before you know it, here comes a baby in a baby carriage. And then another less than 2 years later. Some of the best years of my life followed. Raising my daughter and my son, spending all our days together, playing, praying, exploring our little corner of the world, will go down in history as the best thing I ever did with my life. They were my world, and it was a wonderful world for oh too short of a season of life. Somewhere along the middle of their growing up years, things were swirling around us. We had endured and found exodus from an abusive church. We faced heavier marital turmoil that included unfaithfulness, work addiction, control, misogyny, And would you believe it? Those very same pesky communication issues that we began our relationship with so many years before. On top of all that, my father issues, long unresolved and seemingly forgotten, were rearing their ugly heads, as so often happens for people around the age of 30. My first journal began mostly as exercise recommended by the first counselor I ever saw, a woman who would, over the next decade and a half, become like the loving and understanding mother that I never had and always wanted. Sheila and I developed a connection that was so powerful to me, as powerful to me as any connection my entire life. I knew Sheila loved me, was safe for me, and would hold space for me like no one in my life yet had. My in-laws were more like the loving parents I'd always longed for as a child. But you always know with your in-laws that ultimately, if things don't fare well in the marriage, they're his, not mine. Sheila, however, was mine. And Sheila was the reason I began to journal, the one who introduced me to the concept of journaling. I had no idea then just how powerfully journaling would affect my life. Journaling is what I attribute my entire recovery to, because the process of putting my feelings onto paper and voicing my prayers in writing did what I don't imagine anything else in my life ever could have done. It introduced me to who I was, what I was feeling, what I was experiencing, what I wanted and needed in my life. It honestly took years of doing it before I was able to really see the powerful effect that it was having on my life. I wouldn't have known it after just trying it for a week or so. When I went on what I call my solo sojourning, which I recommend to all my clients, after my divorce was final, I went on a trip for a week by myself in a cabin near the mountains. And I spent an entire week just getting to know myself, love myself, enjoying myself. I did whatever I wanted to do, whenever I wanted to do it. I hiked in the mountains by myself. I went on little excursions by myself. I enjoyed my time, most importantly, in that cabin by myself, crying all the tears I needed to cry, screaming at the top of my lungs if I needed to, writing letters to the people that I needed to say things to that I could never say, so that I could ceremonially destroy those letters and have that release of all those things that I needed to say. One thing in particular that I did on my solo surgery was to read every single word of every single journal that I had written in for the last 15 years.
Ads are so annoying, aren't they? As a podcast listener myself, I know this to be true. However, as a podcaster, I also know they are necessary. It takes a lot of time and expense to put together a podcast that airs every week and comes to you at no cost. As a woman recovering from divorce myself, I know that you understand my time is valuable. And that's why after almost 2 years on the airwaves and over 100 episodes, I find it necessary to start advertising to make it possible to continue to bring you this quality content that I know you need and want each week. But you can skip the ads altogether. Want to know how? Go to patreon.com/SOS Divorce, and you'll be able to select from 3 Patreon fan club member tiers that range from just $5 to $10 a month. You'll never miss it, and you never have to hear another ad again. You can also get bonus content, early access to episodes, and more. That's patreon.com/SOS Divorce, and Patreon is spelled Patreon. Thank you for your support of me as I offer support to you. We are all in this together.
I had never even planned to do that. I had so many different journals that I'd used over the years, and they were just collecting dust here, there, and everywhere. And then when I moved out of my marital home and got my own place, they all got put into the same box. And on a whim, actually, decided to put those journals in a bag and take them with me on that trip. I didn't even really plan to do that, but I'm so glad I did. It honestly was life-changing. I sat there for hours and hours over the course of that week reading all of these. I tried as best as I could to like put them in chronological order and to read them all. And in doing it all in one sitting or in such a short capacity of time, I was able to begin to see patterns that emerged and to understand more about myself that I maybe never would have put together if I hadn't been journaling all those years. And I was able to see these patterns and these ways that I was getting in my own way and not seeing things accurately. And more than anything, in the moment when I was writing in those journals, I was able to see things about myself and about my situations and about the people in my life and about just my own actions and decisions and desires that I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't taken the time to sit down and write. And it was something that I enjoyed doing. I would wake up every morning and spend time journaling. And I would feel the difference every day if I didn't do that or if I did. It really became that important. And on this trip, I even not only read all of those journals, but also wrote in my journal and wrote and wrote and wrote everything that I had thought and felt and experienced as I went through my divorce, and just really felt like a lot of closure for so much of the dysfunction and pain that I have just described here to you today from my childhood and my adolescence and my marriage and just my entire life. That can all truly be attributed to journaling, taking the time to put pen to paper and see what comes out of your brain. The best analogy that I've ever heard of journaling is that it is like taking out the mental trash. And when you think about your kitchen trash can and your desire to keep a clean kitchen and what a good feeling it is when your kitchen is clean, just imagine yourself toiling over a sink full of dirty dishes and wiping down all the counters and getting the dishwasher running and then looking around proudly at what a beautiful room you've created. And then suddenly, what is that smell? Oh, the trash. Taking out the trash is like that final step that gives you this beautiful room for the next meal or to walk through as you go about your days. And journaling is very much like that, because your kitchen is the center of your home, right? Kind of the source of connectedness and just eating meals together. And it, for a lot of people, is a part of the home where you walk through it to get to other places in the house. And it's where you meet others, and it's how you just kind of orient yourself to the whole house sometimes. And when I feel like, anyway, for me, when I have a clean kitchen, I feel like the whole house feels cleaner for some reason. And so in that way, journaling is like taking out the mental trash. I started off today talking about how journaling dissolves the pain and confusion and stress of all of the racing millions of thoughts that we have all day, every day, and how important it is to release those and not keep them trapped. And that's exactly what journaling does. It bundles up that stinky trash and puts it out for it to be taken away. And so you're not smelling it anymore and dealing with it anymore. And you have a clean, pleasant smelling source of connectedness and that place that just feels like the heart of your home and the home of your mind. So I hope that something that I have shared here today has inspired you to consider how you might incorporate journaling into your life and in your divorce recovery and even in your divorce survival. One of the top recommendations that I give my new clients is to get and start a divorce journal. I cannot tell you how much that will save stress. If you will just go to the drugstore and buy, I think they cost $1 or $2 or something, buy a 5-subject notebook and have it with you everywhere you go. Divide that 5 subjects up into lawyer, financial advisor, therapist, coach, any other main people that you are having support you through your divorce. And everywhere you go, write down everything you're told, every question you have, every task that you need to take care of. If you're at the lawyer and you think of something you have to talk about with the financial advisor, flip over to that section and write that down. It just will save you so much stress and pain and frustration if you have everything written down as you go. And you can do that electronically too. And that goes for journaling as well. You can do it in an electronic way if that works better for you and your lifestyle. But it truly does help to get things down in black and white where you don't feel like you have to carry them around with you all the time. So I hope that you will give this a try. I think you'll be glad you did. And I will look forward to meeting you here again soon. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a blessed and wonderful day.
Thank you for tuning in today. I hope something I shared helped you to think differently about the difference you could be making in your own life by giving voice to your innermost thoughts. The worries and the fears, as well as the wants and needs and gratitude that we all hold within us, are a part of who we are. And who we are matters inside and outside the context of relationships. So knowing and loving yourself is job number one while you're making major life transitions, especially. And of course, right alongside having a tribe of people who are good to you that you can be good to in return. And if you can make journaling a part of your life in any way, I think you will see that it allows you to know and love yourself and those in your life better than you were before. Thank you again for being here with me this week to explore this. And I hope that as you go through your major life transition, you find all kinds of great ways to do it in a more happy, healthy, and empowering way. Until next week, remember there is help as you transition and hope as you are starting over stronger.